now I want to bring up, it suddenly got louder, right? I found the microphone after all this time. Good. I'm going to bring up Clint Peters, who is a PhD student in our nonfiction program at UNT, a wonderful writer, and he's going to talk to us a little bit and give us a proper introduction. So here's Clint.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Corey. Thank you all so much for being here. It is an honor to introduce Jaquira Diaz. I would like to start this mini biography with the obligatory, for these kind of readings, list of publications, which in this case is both awe-inducing as well as envy-inducing. The Best American Essays, a little-known magazine called Rolling Stone, a local newspaper called The Guardian, Kenyon Review, where she's worked for 2 years, as well as Brevity, Southern Review, Plowshares, The Sun, Salon, The Rumpus, the Los Angeles Review of Books, and really the list goes on. Here recently, there's the Reynolds Prize, or the Reynolds Price Prize in Fiction, and 2 Pushcart Prizes, which some of you may know is kind of like winning the Emmy for writers. I first encountered Jaquira Diaz in an essay published in the Waveform anthology, which we have on sale outside, as Corey mentioned. It's a stunning book out from the University of Georgia Press, a vibrant collection of female essayists of all stripes. And also on sale, of course, is the Best American Essays 2016, which contains Diaz's heartbreaking and forceful essay, Ordinary Girls. I highly recommend both. Currently, she is working on 4 books. Just 4. She's working on a novel in collaboration with Keith Wilson, a memoir that I'm really excited about growing up in Miami, a collection of travel essays, and a novel that she has said, quote, is in a drawer somewhere. But we know from past experience to expect sooner rather than later. Despite this impressive list of accolades, she has said in an interview that she's most proud of her efforts to revitalize and re-energize the literary community of Miami, including working with the Miami Book Fair International and the Orange Island Arts Foundation, whose mission is, quote, cultivating community through the written word. The focus on community continues in her work. When explaining her writing process, Jaquira Diaz has repeatedly said something along the lines of, I start with place and then think about that for a long time before moving on to characters, real or fictional, what they want and what they struggle with. What's fascinating to me about this commitment to community is that she is by admission a wanderer. She was a runaway as a teen, lived on the road as an adult writer, writing about kids like she had been, who, she writes, quote, were out there on their own looking for something. She was born in Puerto Rico and raised in Miami, but the Miami of her birth no longer exists, the city of abandoned buildings and violence and storytellers. Her Miami was gentrified by investors and Miami Vice wannabes. And so, when she writes her home into existence, her essays and stories are a form of time travel. She writes about teenagers like her who faced gut-punching poverty and tough choices and horrors like suicide and even murder. As an adult writer living on the road, she's flocked to stories and to places like the McDowell Colony that pay her to sit and think and write. Today, she makes her home at Kenyon College, Ohio, as a Kenyon Review Fellow. Perhaps not surprisingly, one of her favorite song lyrics, she has told the journal Cosmonauts Avenue, comes from Sam Cooke's A Change Is Gonna Come. Sam Cooke sings, I'm not gonna sing, but Sam Cooke sings, I was born by the river in a little tent. Oh, just like the river, I've been running ever since. I'm very thankful that Jaquira Diaz's river has flowed into Denton, Texas. Thank you very much for being here.
Wow. I don't even know how to follow that, but thank you so much for that introduction. Thank you all for being here, and thank you, Joe, for bringing me. Thank you to UNT. It's really exciting to meet all of you, our next generation of young writers, and it's really exciting to be here sharing my work with you. I know that some of you have already read Beach City and that you've been talking about it in class, so I'm going to start with that before I move on to some new work. So I'm just going to start. I'm going to read from my phone because I have a different version that I printed out that I realize is not as good as the one that you all have read. Beach City. We talked about Miami Beach like it belonged to us, convinced that the tourists who came down to swim in our ocean and dance in our nightclubs were fucking up our city. We were 17, 18, 19-year-old hoodlums, our hair in cornrows, too tight ponytails, too much hairspray, dark brown lip liner, noses and belly buttons pierced, door knocker earrings, jailhouse ankle tattoos. We didn't have time for boys from Hollywood or North Miami, busters who drove their hoopties with the windows down because they didn't have AC, calling out to us trying to get phone numbers as we crossed Washington Avenue or Lincoln Road, our chancletas slapping the sidewalk. What did they know about surfing during hurricane winds, fucking on lifeguard stands, breathing underwater? What did they know about millions of stray cats pissing in the sand dunes, entire flocks of rogue seagulls dropping shit torpedoes, about refugees and kilos of cocaine and bodies washing up on our shores? We were the ones who knew what it meant to belong here, to be made whole during full moon drum circles, dancing, drinking, smoking it up with our homeboys. We knew what it meant to bloody our knuckles here, to break teeth here, to live and breathe these streets day in, day out, the glow of the neon hotel signs on the waterfront, the salt and sweat of this beach city. One night, we parked Brown's Mustang behind the skating rink on Collins, hoofed it to the beach. We took our bottles of Old English and Mad Dog 2020, the six of us passing a blunt and listening to Tupac's Hit 'Em Up blaring from somebody's radio. And every time they sang, grab your Glocks when you see Tupac, the boys grabbed their dicks and we all laughed our asses off. Brown danced, stripping off his clothes while we cheered him on, me and AJ keeling over, slapping our knees. Flaca, China, and Cisco climbed to the top of the lifeguard stand, singing, "Go Brown, go Brown." When he was down to just boxers, Brown gave up and we booed him, threw our balled up socks and sneakers at him. Me and AJ were out behind the lifeguard stand, sand between our toes, feeling for each other in the dark. We ran around laughing and laughing, and I took his hand, danced circles around him in slow motion. I don't remember when AJ first told me he loved me, or even if he told me, but I knew. I felt it every time he came around, every time our thighs touched while sitting together on Gina's couch, or when the six of us had to squeeze into Brown's Mustang and I sat sideways on his lap, my lip brushing against his ear, his arms around my waist. Or when we stayed up all night talking, even though he had to get up for school the next morning, something I didn't have to worry about since I was a high school dropout. Or on nights when the liquor and the weed made my head spin, the heat and the high coming down on me all at once, and only AJ around to keep me from falling. Down by the shore, Brown was so fucked up he dropped to his knees, then lay down sideways on the sand. Later, we would all carry him back to his car. Flaca would drive us to her place a few blocks away. We would all stagger up the stairs to her little studio, put Brown to sleep in the bathtub, and smoke Newports on the balcony. He would wake up with the munchies an hour later. "You got any cheese?" he'd call out from the bathroom. Cisco would grab an entire pack of Kraft singles from Flaca's fridge, and the two of us would toss them into the tub, slice by slice, while Brown tried to catch them in his mouth. But before all that, the six of us dancing and running around on the beach, Gina chucking down Mad Dog, Flaca and Cisco kissing on the steps of the lifeguard stand, and AJ looking at me under the moonlight, a cloud of smoke all around us. I wrapped my arms around him and said, "Don't let me go." We were laughing, hitting the blunt. We were the faraway waves breaking, the music and the ocean and the heat rising, rising, rising like a fever. We were bodies made of smoke and water. Thank you. And I'm going to read something new. So this is related. This is all related. It's from the same book, and this happens before Beach City. Girls, monsters. That winter, the year my homegirl Boogie turned 14, we got it in our heads that we could run away, leave Miami Beach, and never come back. For months, I'd spent every night lost in a book. I'd read The Virgin Suicides over one weekend. I'd finished Dracula during 3 days. We were without power because Mommy didn't pay the FP&L bill, using the neighbor's flashlight to light its pages under my covers. And I just read The Catcher in the Rye and lost my shit for Holden Caulfield. So I decided we should do exactly what Holden did. I'd run away, and I'd take Boogie with me. I told Boogie about my plans one night while we smoked my mother's cigarettes in the park. She was down. She'd seen my life, had spent hours and hours huddled with me in my bottom bunk while my mother, in the middle of a psychotic episode, ran around talking to herself, opening closets and cupboards and bedroom doors, looking for a man she said had followed her home and was hiding in her apartment. Boogie had sat with me on my bedroom floor, her arms around my neck, after my mother came after me with a knife. Boogie had her own problems, but she was like me. She read books on the down low, dreamed of becoming a famous singer one day, getting the fuck out of Miami and traveling the world. We talked about what our lives would be. We would get gigs playing jazz clubs around the country. She would sing and I would play the piano. I'd write all the songs, and when we got older, I'd write books about our time on the road. We dreamed of adventure, of hitchhiking to New York City during winter break, although I wasn't looking for a specific place since I didn't believe there was anywhere I belonged. We wanted to meet exotic characters at subway stations, hang out at the Lavender Room, ice skate in Central Park. We'd be just like Holden, except we'd take advantage of our time in the city and have sex. Lots of it. We'd lose our virginities to some anonymous musicians, nameless New York rappers in baggy jeans and basketball jerseys, and we'd have sex in the back of their limo while listening to Slick Rick's children's story. We'd party at the Limelight, become club kids, wear Halloween costumes in February, pink hair, silver glitter eyeshadow, blue lipstick, leather dog collar. Nose, eyebrows, lips pierced. I'd be nothing like the Jackie who lived with her crazy mother across the street from Normandy Park, the girl who was full of secrets, who believed in monsters. I would finally be free. That winter, we watched New York Undercover on group phone calls, Boogie and China and Flacca and Shorty and me, all of us on the party line, screaming at the TV when Michael De Lorenzo and Malik Yoba took off down the street chasing some drug dealer. We got pictures of Jodeci and Boyz II Men for magazines, taped them on the covers of our notebooks. We watched The X-Files, imagined ourselves solving paranormal mysteries, having alien babies, turning into monsters. And then we speculated about the size of Mulder's dick. We measured out our life in songs, singing as we put on eyeliner in front of the mirror, as we passed each other in the halls at school, as we waited for the bus in front of the park. We belted out Mariah's version of I'll Be There in Boogie's mother's car on the way to a sleepover. We broke into fits of spontaneous booty shaking as we walked along West Avenue when a car drove by blasting Shake What Your Mama Gave Ya. As we rode the escalator in Aventura Mall. We choreographed dances to the Uncle Al song at China's house. We dogged each other to It's Your Birthday while hanging from the monkey bars, while drinking orange sodas at Miami Subs, while tagging the handball courts, everywhere Boogie, China, Flacca, Shorty, Jackie. That winter, we paid tecatos at 7-Eleven to get us bottles of strawberry Cisco, took the bus to Bayside, got on the party boats, danced and danced and danced with older boys, handed them our phone numbers at the end of the night. We took the bus to all ages clubs where they sold no alcohol, but everybody smoked weed. We passed the blunt across the dance floor to our girls, all of us sweaty and smiling. We knew all the lyrics to every single DJ Uncle Al song, mixed it up, and holes in this house, and bass is gonna blow your mind. Uncle Al, who was known all over Miami for promoting nonviolence and peace in the hood, but was shot and killed outside his house in Alapata. On stage, in the club, older girls dusted with baby powder shook and shook their asses, flashing us, all the girls booing, all the boys screaming, cheering, fists in the air. We smiled at each other nervously, recognizing some of the girls we knew from school, 2 years ahead of us, 3 years ahead of us, our friend's cousin, a girl my brother dated once. And days later, we would hear about one of those girls, see her face on the news, about how she and her best friend were found floating in Biscayne Bay, strangled, tied together, their school pictures all over our TVs for days, for weeks, their story on the front page of the Sun-Sentinel with the headline, "They were inseparable friends, and they were slain together." We would all talk about how they were so young, had so much life left to live, as if we knew anything about life and living it. We would remember their smiles, their dancing, their friendship. We would speculate about the who, the why, the how. That winter, on the last day of school, me and Shorty cut out after lunch, headed to the beach for National Skip Day. The two of us in Daisy Dukes and chancletas, our curly hair wild and frizzy and sun-streaked, the high school kids in their bathing suits and shades, seeing each other's bodies for the first time. How, when a fight broke out over somebody's girlfriend, one dude holding the other underwater, arms swinging wildly, we all ran toward the water to see it. How, when he was finally able to get free, none of us saw it coming. The walk back to his car, the loaded gun pulled from his glove box. How we stood there for seconds, minutes, hours, a lifetime. Me and Shorty, the bodies on the sand. How we lost each other in the madness. Shorty running up the beach and me heading for the water. How for a moment I thought it was possible that I could lose her, that I could be like one of those girls. That winter, when the Christmas lights went up around Normandy Isle and all the Miami radio stations started playing Feliz Navidad, Boogie and I took off. We didn't leave a note, didn't give any explanation. There would be nothing left for our parents when they discovered that we were gone. We figured it'd be easier that way, that nobody would try to find us, or worse, stop us. We tossed a change of clothes into Boogie's JanSport and hit the streets, walking along Normandy Drive, and I stuck my thumb out once we got to the corner of 71st and Collins. "We can't just get into some random dude's car," Boogie said. "We need to be smart." "Sure," I said. But when a green sedan pulled over, we climbed in without even a second glance at the driver. Turns out his name was Carlos, and he was headed toward Bird Road. We had no idea where Bird Road was, but we took the ride anyway. He was a middle-aged man with a thick mane of hair that screamed just for men. I rode shotgun while Carlos drove us down the 836, a lit cigarette pinched between his lips. He asked questions about our boyfriends and our parents and what exactly two 14-year-olds were doing getting in cars with strangers. "We ran away," I said, checking myself out in the visor mirror. "Why's that?" he asked. I shrugged. "Because home sucks. Because this whole fucking place sucks." "You shouldn't talk that way," he said, "a pretty girl like you." But I wasn't falling for his bullshit. From my mother, I'd learned that men always pretended to care about you, saying exactly what you wanted to hear when there was something they wanted, and men always wanted something. I reached into the center console for his Marlboros, plucked one out for myself, tossed the pack to Boogie. As he pulled off the road and we approached the sign for Santa's Enchanted Forest, Miami's Christmas theme park, I got an idea. Boogie and I had never been there, so it seemed like destiny. It was exactly where we were supposed to be. I snuck a look at Boogie over my shoulder, gathering my curls into a ponytail. I smiled at Carlos like I'd never smiled at any man before, and asked him if he would take us to Santa's Enchanted Forest. "I can drop you off out front," he said. But he hadn't caught my meaning. I had meant for him to drop us off, since we barely had $3 between the two of us and couldn't pay the entry fee, whatever it was. Then there were the rides, the food, the arcade. "No," I said, "I mean take us, take us." We stopped at a red light, Carlos looking over the steering wheel without a word. I let go of my hair, my curls falling over my shoulders. Boogie sat in the back, eyebrows raised, waiting. "Fine," he said, "let's go." I threw my hands up over my head and Boogie hooted. Carlos smiled, adjusting himself in the driver's seat, tossing his cigarette out the window, and then the light changed. Inside Santa's enchanted forest, we caused all types of hell. We made Carlos pay the entry fees, treat us to ice cream, elephant ears, pizza. We cut in line, left him behind while we rode the Gravitron in the bumper cars. We got on every ride while he pretended he was some sort of throwback hustler, wearing his shades after the sunset, chain smoking, bobbing his head to whatever music the DJ played. I never wondered why he took us, why he was paying for everything, never even considered the reason he'd spent all night waiting on 2 underage girls he picked up on the side of the road. Because I knew, even if Boogie didn't, that there would come a moment when the night would end, when Carlos would show us what he really wanted and what he really was. After hours in Santa's enchanted forest, after we got tired of every other ride, Boogie and I rode the Ferris wheel, sucking on the ring pops Carlos had bought for us. We rode side by side, and as our car rose, we took in the whole park, the cast members dressed as Santa's elves, and a carrot-nosed Frosty the Snowman, the fake cotton snow under the Christmas trees lining the main strip, kids finishing up their corn dogs and cotton candy as they boarded the carousel. Everywhere the smell of cinnamon and fried dough, teenagers lining up for the space coaster and the mega drop. And then, when we got to the top, there it was, the tallest Christmas tree in South Florida. Later, Carlos would change. He'd get mad at us for flirting with a group of boys from Treasure Island, and when Boogie kissed one of them outside Santa's grotto, he'd corner me by the workshop assembly line, squeeze my breasts hard. I'd push him back, but it would do no good because he was stronger than me, and his eyes were already glazed over with too much beer and too much desire. He'd reach down and grab me there, between my legs, and then he'd give me a look that only I could read, a look that said I owed him. This was the price for my wildness and my freedom. I was his. But then Boogie and the boys would show up, and Carlos would let go, and I'd think, thank you, oh my God. Grab Boogie and make a run for it, ditch Carlos and ditch the boys too. We take the last bus back home, right up front while the driver listened to the Jesus station, and years later, I'd remember this moment and think about Holden, how he ran after Mr. Antolini tried to hit on him, how the whole book was about Holden running, but he didn't really go anywhere but home, because maybe in the end, he had nowhere else to go. But all that would come later. While we were still on that Ferris wheel, still in that moment on top of the world, Boogie and I had no idea. We just sucked on our ring pops and looked out at the theme park, at the people and the lights and the fake snow and the tacky-ass Christmas stuff, even though we were less than an hour away from Miami Beach. And in that instant, we let ourselves believe that we were on our way, or that we had somehow already made it, that we were already free. It would be the same the next winter and the winter after that. We would go right back to drinking, smoking, fighting, dancing, running away. We were ordinary girls, but we would have given anything to be monsters. We wanted to be seen, finally, to exist in the lives we'd mapped out for ourselves. We wanted more than noise. We wanted everything. We knew desire well. We felt the warmth of that place between our legs, and there was nothing animal or strange about it. We were not creatures or aliens or women in disguise, but girls. We were girls. That was depressing. Monster story. The spring after they found the body, our mother took us away from our father and grandmother, stashed us in a one-bedroom in South Beach, a small place on Bay Road with a mattress on the floor and the stained sectional Mommy got in the divorce. We thought it was the same street that had been all over the news, North Bay Road, and for days it was all Elena and I could talk about. How Mommy had taken us against our will, how she brought us to live in a place where dead bodies were dumped. It happened one morning in early November. 2 Florida Power and Light employees were working outside a house on 54th and North Bay Road when one of them discovered the body. It was the beginning of the dry season, and most of the beach was still recovering from one of its legendary Lincoln Road Halloween street parties. The entire pedestrian mall transformed, every block between Alton Road and Washington Avenue overcrowded, stages with live music, haunted houses, floats with demons and vampires waving at us from the rafters, and everywhere we looked, Freddy Kruegers with their razor gloves, Jasons in their hockey masks, and knife-wielding Michael Myerses. Serial killers were the most popular monsters that year. When Craig Criminger and Stuart Silver parked their FP&L van in front of the house on North Bay Road to do some repair work on a nearby utility pole, most of the neighborhood kids were already in school. The mourning doves cooed as the two men worked, the smell of cat piss all around the block, and something else, something stronger. At around 8:30 a.m., Criminger and Silver made the discovery. Under the cherry hedge between the house's driveway and the garden wall, lying in a pile of grass and leaves, the dead body of a little boy. In El Caserío Padre Rivera, where we lived until I was 7, parents summoned La Llorona, the mythical monster that kept kids from misbehaving. I was obsessed with monsters. I watched novelas about demons and exorcisms, movies about witches who came back from the dead to kill townspeople who'd burn them at the stake. I loved zombies, werewolves, Frankenstein's monster, Dracula. I was fascinated by the possibility of killer alligators living in the sewers, or real-life Jaws stalking swimmers in La Playa de Macao, knife-wielding leprechauns running around town looking for their pots of gold. La Llorona was a boogie woman, sometimes a pumpkin-headed demon in a tattered wedding dress, sometimes a woman with a goat's head. She roamed the streets mostly unseen, unless you were so bad La Llorona was hunting you. Our aunties always had La Llorona's phone number. Our fathers, if they came home from work to disobedient children, would be sure to get their hands on those digits. Our mother sang us La Llorona lullabies, which were really horror stories about how she would come for you in the night, and when she finally found you, ripped you from the arms of your parents, or took you from your bed while you slept, what awaited you was a fate worse than death. La Llorona ate kids for breakfast. If you were a troublemaker, if you got into fights, if you didn't eat what your abuela made for dinner, if you refused to sleep come bedtime, La Llorona rose from the darkness to make you hers. I was 11 when they found him. Elena was 7. We were living with Papi, Abuela, and Levi in an apartment across from Flamingo Park, a small place with paint peeling off the walls, rusty hinges on the doors, a family of mice living in a hole behind our ancient refrigerator. We'd find the mice in our shoes, in the kitchen cabinets, under the bathroom vanity, fast little fuckers that darted across the linoleum while Elena and I screamed and ran for our lives, Levi laughing his ass off. Levi was 13 that November and thought he was our watchdog, so he beat us up when we didn't listen, or when we gave him lip, or when he was pissed at something we did or didn't do. He terrorized us with stories about mice building nests in our curly hair, chewing off the tips of our fingers while we slept, sucking the liquid out of our eyeballs. Until one day, he got Abuela's cast iron skillet and whacked one. Brain and blood and guts splattered on the kitchen floor, picked it up by the tail and flung it at us, me and Elena ducking out of the way, screaming, "Oh my God, what is wrong with you?" It would be months before a boy down the street threw a rock that sent Elena to the hospital with a bloody eye, before I ran away from home, stole an Ocean Electric van, and took off for the Florida Keys with some older boys, before I swallowed my mother's pills the first time, the second. Would be years before Levi started using steroids, before he tried to strangle me, before I stabbed him with a steak knife. These were the days before juvie hall, before blunts laced with Scudder and bottles of Cisco and quarts of Old English, before school counselors and teachers and friends' parents and juvenile probation officers trying to save me, pulling me aside and looking into my eyes saying, "Don't you know how dangerous this is? Don't you know?" Before all that, there was a second mouse, a third, a fourth, and then it was the dead ones that started showing up in our shoes, our backpacks. Once, while we waited for a hurricane to land on Miami Beach, the rain pelting our windows like pebbles. Levy punched me so hard in the ear, he sent me tumbling across the bedroom we shared, my whole head ringing. Years later, during my military entrance processing physical, a Navy audiologist would show me the results of my hearing test, say, "It's pretty bad, you almost didn't make it." Once, while running wild through the cañaverales behind El Caserío, Levy pushed me face first into the sugarcane, sliced a gash down my left thumb almost to the bone. Sometimes the scar itches. Sometimes I can make out the sweet brown burnt sugar smell of those summer mornings. Once, that same summer, I watched my Aunt Titi take a sharp blade to the inside of her forearm. She was still a child herself, just 4 years older than me. 3 years before, Levy had slammed a door on her hand so hard it severed her pinky. They weren't able to reattach it. In our house, the story of the severed pinky became the stuff of family legend, like a monster story, told over drunken New Year's Eve parties and barbecues, each one of us claiming to remember it like it happened yesterday. The rush to the hospital, the severed pinky in a cup of ice, all that blood, all that screaming, all those years of resentment. Even after they buried him, people in Miami Beach still told the story. The diaper wrapped in packing tape, the lollipop t-shirt, like the severed finger of an entire community. As the years passed, we could all remember where we'd been when we heard the news, how old we were when they found him, how we watched it all unfold, how we waited each day for developments, how we speculated about the parents, passed strangers in the park and wondered, is it her? Is it him or him or him? And then later, how we learned his name, his mother's, that he did belong to someone, that he had not been, as we'd come to think of him, ours. I'm not done. I was just kidding. The first mouse was the hardest. The chaos in the kitchen, Levy shoving me out of the way, how he trapped it, garbage can on one side, Papi's toolbox on the other, how he closed it in with a cardboard box, how, out of nowhere, he handed me the skillet, how afterward I would lie, say it wasn't me who did it, but my brother. How in a different apartment, years later, in Abuela's kitchen, my brother coming after me and all I could do was breathe, brace myself, chest rising, falling, I opened a drawer, pulled out a steak knife. How when they arrested me, the knife on the living room floor, someone on the phone, Elena crying and crying, the cops asking, was it a stabbing motion or a slicing motion? How was she holding the knife? How my father, his forehead beaded with sweat, his eyes red-rimmed and puffy, kept asking, ¿Qué hiciste? ¿Qué hiciste? What did you do? One Saturday at the beach, the summer after she took us to the apartment on Bay Road, Mommy met a man. He was younger than her, maybe 20, and he looked like he couldn't care less, with dirt under his fingernails, his sun-bleached t-shirt sporting a quarter-sized hole on the shoulder. He'd walked up to her while Lena and I were swimming, struck up a conversation. When we got out of the water, I found him lying on my towel, smoking a joint and getting sand all over my sneakers. We looked at him hard. That's my towel, I said, my mouth a fist. He smiled, ignoring me, and handed my mother the joint. Your kids are tough, he said. By then, Mommy had already schooled us in the ways of men, what they wanted, what they needed, how they let you down, abandoned you, made promises they'd never keep, how they hurt you, then made you think you deserved it. Men were not to be trusted, not even our father, and especially not men you just met. But she decided to take this guy home anyway. When we were ready to leave, Elena and I, wrapped in our towels, our curls frizzy and dry from the salt water, Mommy announced that he was coming home with us. Just for a little while, she said. During our walk home, Elena and I argued, told her that we didn't even know this guy who could turn out to be some murderer or rapist looking for single mothers with girls. Told the guy straight up that we didn't want him in our apartment and that there was no way in hell he was going in there, and that if we would call our father and our uncles and then the cops. But we didn't even have a phone, and our threats didn't bother Mommy. Just ignore them, she told the guy. And he did. When we got to the apartment on Bay Road, Mommy and the man locked us out of the bedroom, left us in the living room, waiting. I thought about taking Elena to the payphone at the Chevron station 2 blocks away, or walking over to Papi's job, but I couldn't leave my mother alone with some guy who could still turn out to be a murderer. We sat there most of the night, Elena on one side, me on the other, both of us still in our bathing suits. I knocked several times, reminding Mommy that we needed showers, that we needed dinner. We were anxious to finally wash the salt water off our bodies, condition and detangle our hair. We wanted to get to our secret stash of cash. We'd stashed enough for 2 hot dogs and a Slurpee, maybe a bag of chips. We fell asleep waiting. Later, every time I told this story, I'd say I was not afraid, just angry. I was mad at my mother for locking herself in the bedroom and leaving us to fend for ourselves with no food, for bringing some stranger into our apartment and into our lives. I would say that this is when it happened, in the middle of the night, when I woke to the sound of my little sister snoring, asleep on an empty stomach, and decided that we didn't need a mother, that we could take care of each other. I would not say that when I woke, wearing nothing but my pink and black bikini with a zipper on the front, handed down to me by Titi, the man my mother brought home was standing in front of me in the middle of the living room, naked, holding his dick. How when I opened my eyes and saw him standing there, I pretended I was not surprised, pretended I was not scared, and said something like, "Get away from me, you asshole." Even though what I really wanted was to scream for my mother. Or how he laughed at the sound of my voice, or how afterward, when we were finally allowed back into our bedroom, Elena and I found our secret stash of money gone. How Mommy admitted that he hadn't stolen it, that she'd let him have it, because, she said, he needed cab fare. It was his mother who killed him. Or that's what everybody said. Every news station broadcasting her story, every day her picture in the papers. They'd found Lazaro's mother, Ana Maria Cardona, living somewhere in Central Florida with her 2 other kids, and Olivia Gonzalez, who was either her roommate, her lover, or her live-in girlfriend, depending on the source. The 2 women had dumped his body under the bushes outside the house on North Bay Road, and once they saw on the news that he'd been found, they headed north. They were arrested in Orlando and brought back to Miami, where they were both charged with aggravated child abuse and first-degree murder. I watched the news on Channel 10, ate Frosted Flakes in front of the TV, turned up the volume when they showed how the 2 women were transferred from the Miami Beach police station to Dade County Jail. I balanced the cereal bowl on my lap as the 2 handcuffed women were escorted by Miami Beach police detectives, a crowd of locals, reporters, photographers, and camera crews waiting. I put down my spoon, my cereal getting soggy, as each woman was walked past the crowd toward the police cruiser, the onlookers erupting, spitting at them, calling them asesinas, baby killers, monsters. 4 years after they found Lazaro's body, in 1994, a tearful South Carolina mother, Susan Smith, would get on TV with a fake story about an armed black man, a carjacking, and a kidnapping. She would look into the cameras, beg the carjacker to return her sons safely. Her 2 little boys, 3-year-old Michael and 1-year-old Alexander, would be found shortly after, inside their mother's car, still strapped to their car seats, drowned at the bottom of John D. Long Lake. After Smith's confession, after she admitted she had made up the story, she gave police all the details about dressing her children, strapping them to their car seats, driving the car to the lake, and parking it on the boat ramp. How she released the emergency brake, stepped out of the car, how she let the car roll, let it take her children. 2 years after police pulled their bodies from the lake, 7 people, 4 of them children, accidentally drowned while visiting the memorial erected there for Michael and Alexander. They had been driving one night, parked their SUV on the same ramp, letting their headlights shine on the two marble stone pieces. They had been drawn there, people said, wanting to see the place where it had all happened. The lake, they said, had become like a legend, attracting visitors from all over the world, a mythical place. In El Caserío, I spent hours awake in bed, listening for the sounds of La Llorona. I waited for crying, wailing, a woman's voice in the distance calling for her children, one boy, one girl, whose names I didn't know. The stories say that La Llorona killed her children after being rejected by a lover. She had taken her two babies from their beds one night, had walked with them through the woods down to the river, held their bodies underwater until they were gone. Then, when she realized what she'd done, with their lifeless bodies in her arms, she walked into the river and let it take her too. And so, the legend says, La Llorona wails in the dead of night, haunting rivers and beaches and lakes where children swim, parks and playgrounds where they play, calling out for her ghost children. 5 years after they'd found Lazaro's body, I sat in a holding cell at the Miami Beach police station. It was my 6th or 7th arrest, this time for stabbing my brother. The fight had started weeks earlier, after Elena and I moved back with Papi, me and Levy screaming at each other like her parents used to. You ain't my father, I love to say. You ain't shit. Count your blessings, my brother said. He'd snitched to Papi about how I'd walked in stumbling drunk at 3 a.m., I'd snitched about how I found syringes and vials of double testosterone in his backpack, both of us desperate for our father's attention. I was 16, Levy 18, and by then Papi was too tired or too busy or too high to be bothered. What kind of girl, my brother often said, pulling out pages he'd read and then ripped out of my diary, holding them up for scrutiny, hard evidence of the monster I was, definitely not the girl I was supposed to be, the girl Abuela had tried to raise. What kind of girl are you? That afternoon, the fighting had escalated to us wanting to kill each other. During one of Levy's roid rages, after I flung his t-shirts, sneakers, and duffel bags out of our 8th floor balcony, after he slapped me and I slapped him back, he landed a punch on the side of my head that knocked me face down on the floor. When I got back up, he tried to strangle me. Somehow, Elena got him off me. Then I went to the kitchen for the knife. Once, when we still lived in El Caserío, the two of us running wild with the other street kids, I pushed Levy off the front steps of our building. The night before, he had pulled out my hair in handfuls. The sound of his head cracking on the concrete steps was terrifying, exhilarating. My brother and I, we were the same. Part monster, part mouse. Thank you.